The chamber buzzed. Anticipation hung thick in the air. President Trump, a man who needs no introduction and routinely ignores that fact anyway, stood ready to address Congress. He began, a familiar litany of boasts and grievances tumbling forth. Then, a voice cut through the meticulously crafted political theater. Representative Al Green of Texas, his voice booming, cried out, "You have no mandate." Heads whipped around, cameras scrambled. Green, undeterred, repeated the accusation, his voice echoing through the stunned silence. The chamber erupted. Republicans shouted their disapproval. Democrats, caught between party loyalty and the undeniable drama unfolding before them, shifted uncomfortably. The sergeant-at-arms, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else, approached Green. Green, however, remained defiant, his protest a stark counterpoint to the carefully stage-managed political performance unfolding around him. This was not business as usual, this was a line in the sand. Order, or at least the semblance of it, was eventually restored. President Trump, never one to be outdone in the outrage department, continued his speech. However, the air crackled with a tension that even the most finely tuned political antennae couldn't ignore. Green's outburst, brief though it was, had ripped a hole in the carefully constructed fabric of political decorum. And as anyone who's ever tried to sew a button while wrestling a badger knows, once that fabric tears, things can unravel quickly. Republican lawmakers, still smarting from Green's audacity, didn't waste any time. Reprimands, censures. Speaker Mike Johnson, his face a mask of disapproval, declared Green's protest unprecedented in the modern era. A planned, prolonged protest, he fumed, as if Green had meticulously plotted to steal the national spotlight by loudly stating his disagreement with the president. The irony, it seemed, was lost on no one, except perhaps those busy drafting up ways to punish Green for his transgression. Green, for his part, remained unrepentant. He'd known his actions would have consequences, and he seemed prepared to face them head-on. His motives, he insisted, were pure. He was protesting not just President Trump himself, but the policies he represented. Specifically, Green pointed to proposed cuts to entitlement programs, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, as the driving force behind his outburst. These cuts, he argued, would disproportionately impact the most vulnerable Americans, and he refused to remain silent while their safety net was shredded. Cynics, of course, were quick to cry foul. A publicity stunt, they scoffed, a desperate attempt to remain relevant in an increasingly polarized political landscape. And sure, it's undeniable that Green's protest thrust him into the national spotlight. But was it mere attention-seeking, or was it a calculated act of defiance? A desperate attempt to shine a light on issues he felt were being ignored? The answer, like most things in Washington, is likely a bit of both. The fallout from Green's protest was swift and predictable. Multiple censure resolutions were introduced, each one seemingly more sternly worded than the last. The House Freedom Caucus, never ones to miss an opportunity to flex their political muscle, threw their weight behind the most severe punishments. The message was clear. Dissent would not be tolerated, not on their watch. But at what cost? This insistence on decorum. At what point does respect for tradition become a stifling of dissent? Green's protest, while undeniably disruptive, raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of protest itself. In an era of increasing political polarization, where even the most basic facts are up for debate, how do we ensure that dissenting voices are heard? And perhaps more importantly, how do we create a political system where those voices don't need to resort to dramatic outbursts just to be heard? These are questions we, as a nation, must grapple with. Because the alternative, a silent, unquestioning populace, is far more dangerous than any outburst, no matter how disruptive.